anybody can have a lucky night and catch a fall. So this is the way it's going to be in your match for the WWF title. It's not a one-fall match. It's the man that can get the most falls on the other man will become the WWF champion. Do you have a problem with that? I don't have a problem with that. Do you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem. How long of a match are we talking about?
You hear this, McMahon?
Yes, I've just joined you again here on headset and
1 hour.
Whoa!
Oh my goodness!
No timeout, no nothing, because I gotta tell you something. These two guys right here can perform, and there's somebody that's gonna make them, and that's me. March 31st, Anaheim.
February of 1996, Volume 2 of this month's show. Volume 1 is the WCW show looking at Super Brawl. Volume 3 is ECW looking at CyberSlam. We're here to discuss the WWF in Your House 6. I'm being joined first by Chris White. Chris, good afternoon.
Bob, how you doing?
Very well. Chris is a little bit under the weather, so if he sounds like a brand new guest, that's why.
Apologies.
And Rory McNamara.
Hi guys.
Rory kicks off with the news.
Okay. Vince McMahon's wider plan for the Billionaire Ted segments became clearer this month with a series of attacks on the promotion. We will outline this in detail later on, but moves included the company filing a complaint with the FTC about predatory business practices by WCW. Also, and this did make it to air, was a print advert the company attempted to place in both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. While what ultimately ran was more tame, they did show an edit on Raw that read, "Has Ted Turner lost $40 million of your money in his personal vendetta against the World Wrestling Federation?"
Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, is expected to join WCW after giving his 90-day notice on February 21st. It is said that WCW would have offered him a much more favourable contract, more money for fewer dates and more time to spend with his family. The WWF responded to the news by suspending Hall for 6 weeks for what, in theory at least, is an unrelated punishment. On that timeline, he would miss WrestleMania. There is also talk, although less concrete, that Kevin Nash, aka Diesel, will also be going to WCW. Hulk Hogan has spoken with Nash about coming in to work a main event program with him, and there are further rumours that Bret Hart has also been approached.
Bret Hart will face Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania in a 60-minute match, where the wrestler with the most falls wins. This is after Shawn Michaels defeated Owen Hart at In Your House 6, and Bret retained against Diesel in a steel cage, after Undertaker tore through the ring apron and pulled Diesel under. Elsewhere on the show, Vader against Yokozuna was announced for WrestleMania, Razor Ramon defeated the 1-2-3 Kid in a crybaby match, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Duke Drosy.
It looks like the return of the Ultimate Warrior is back on, with a pair of Warrior video packages airing on the 2 Raws after the pay-per-view, although it is not currently clear about what plans are for him. Davey Boy Smith made the news after being acquitted on an aggravated assault charge, not before surprising some people by revealing wrestling to be fake. Witnesses for his alleged victim suggest Smith picked him up before hitting a powerbomb or a piledriver-like manoeuvre, but as Smith, along with other wrestlers, testified, the move would not be possible without the assistance of the person taking it.
And we end with the ratings for the month. On January the 27th, Nitro with Hogan and Flair did a 2.8 against Raw's 2.4. The Bret Undertaker title match on February the 5th wasn't enough, as Nitro did a 2.9 against Raw's 2.7. Raw didn't air on February the 12th. The Westminster Dog Show doing a 3.9 in its place. Nitro unopposed did a 3.7. Coming off of In Your House 6, Raw did a 3.1 to Nitro's 2.9. The combined 6.0 being the highest rating until the following week on February the 26th, with Raw doing a 3.1 and Nitro winning the day with a 3.2. Nitro's replay figures for the entire month also hovers around the 1.0 mark per show. We open Raw on February the 5th with Shawn Michaels and Diesel against the British Bulldog and Yokozuna. After your bog standard WWF tag match, Bulldog goes to break up a pin off a Michaels splash. Michaels moves, Bulldog squashes Yokozuna. Michaels then superkicks Yokozuna out of the ring and the faces win by count out. After the match, Cornette goes off on one on Yokozuna. Vince McMahon then literally says Cornette is verbally raping Yokozuna. Yoko flips and cleans house. He's turning face. We get another Cactus Jack promo. He says maybe he's finally found a hardcore home where he can have nice days. The 1-2-3 Kid comes out carrying a baby's bottle ahead of his match with Hakushi. This match is pretty good actually. Vince McMahon says, despite the legal threat of action from Turner Broadcasting, coming up is the latest edition of Billionaire Ted. Kid wins the match with a double underhook suplex on the top rope. Clarence Mason is still campaigning for the reinstatement of Vader. We get an interview with Gorilla Monsoon, who says he felt like he was hit by a freight train. He wants to apologise to the fans for responding as Gorilla Monsoon, not as the interim president. He said he will return after WrestleMania and that he has faith in Roddy Piper. The main event is Undertaker against Bret Hart for the WWF title. Diesel walks out and jumps in on commentary. Distraction gives Bret the upper hand in the match. Diesel, like Tony Schiavone, thinks a bird's eye view comes from sitting at ringside. Diesel is really exposed on commentary, some of these jokes. Anyway, Taker picks up Bret for a tombstone, but Bret ends up kicking the ref and knocking him out. This cues up Diesel to attack Bret. Taker then attacks Diesel. Diesel then sets up and hits a jackknife powerbomb on the Undertaker, which is quite impressive. Then another, and the match ends in a no contest. We end with Billionaire Ted back in the press conference. Isn't it true WCW has lost millions of dollars over the years, wasting his stockholders' money? Yeah, but I'm having fun. After the merger with Time Warner, will that change? He wants money, that's what motivates him. Raw goes off the air with a picture of an advert the WWF attempted to place in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. The advert reads, "Attention stockholders, Time Warner beware," in big lettering, and has Ted Turner lost $40 million of your money in his personal vendetta against the World Wrestling Federation? Where are these losses reported in TBS financial statements? A modified version did end up being published in the New York Times. There was no Raw on February the 12th as it was preemptive for the Westminster Dog Show, so we'll move on to In Your House.
Okay, next question.
Billionaire Ted.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Billionaire Ted, isn't it true that your wrestling company has lost millions of dollars over the years, thus wasting your stockholders' good money?
Yeah, but I'm having fun. You know, it's kind of like a plaything. Yeah. Next question.
Billionaire Ted.
When the $40 billion merger with Time Warner goes through, will you exhibit the same attitude toward the Time Warner stockholders?
Well, hell yeah. I mean, as long as I'm having fun, that's all that matters, right?
But certainly your stockholders care about the millions of dollars you've wasted. It's their money.
Well, sure they care, but I don't. You know, I mean, I'm entitled to a plaything. All right, next question.
Billionaire Ted, what is it that motivates you?
Money. Power, money. Yeah, take your pick. I want more. I want to own everything, so when I die and I see my daddy again, I can say, Dad, kiss this. The end. That's all, folks. See ya.
And we will open up the show with In Your House 6. Rory, you can kick us off with the results.
Can indeed. Razor Ramon defeated the 1-2-3 Kid in a crybaby match. Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Duke Droese. Yokozuna defeated the British Bulldog by disqualification. Shawn Michaels defeated Owen Hart in a match for a WWF World Championship title shot at WrestleMania 12. And Bret Hart defeated Diesel in a steel cage match for the WWF World Championship.
Chris, what do you think of the show?
It's hard to be too critical of it, really, because I don't think there was anything particularly bad outside of the crybaby stipulation. A few things did annoy me, like the finish to the main event. I didn't enjoy that, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in more depth when we get to the match in itself. And it obviously had the Shawn Owen match was pretty wonderful. So, all in all, I thought it was a pretty good show. Obviously not too long, only 5 matches on the card. Slow start, but by the time you get them last 2 matches with Shawn Owen and Bret Diesel, I think you've got 2 great matches there. So, a worthwhile pay-per-view.
Rory.
Yeah, I agree. In Your House, by its very nature, is always going to be a placeholder show. And when you put one between the Royal Rumble and the WrestleMania 12, it's going to be a real placeholder show. I thought what needed to be good was very, very good. Owen Shawn in particular, and the main event had its moments too. However, the first hour, in my opinion, was not very good. So it was a real show of two halves, in my opinion. But it passed muster.
Yeah, I think it says a lot for how low standards got in the early to middle part of last year that we're looking at this as a good show. There's a very, very good match between Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart in the middle of this. Otherwise, this show ain't. There's also a very good promo segment between Jim Cornette and Roddy Piper that we'll hear in a bit. Other than those two things, though, this is a very underwhelming show. Bret Hart, Diesel, I disagree with Chris. I don't think that was a very good match at all, save for a very creative finish. And I must admit, it does seem like all three of us are a bit down on this match, but there was some wider praise to Razor and the Kid, which I didn't think was that good either. But we'll come to that in a minute. We start with Sonny on a beach in a bikini. Viewer discretion is advised. We're in Louisville, Kentucky. Vince McMahon and Joe Lawler are on the call. And we open up with Razor Ramon versus the 1-2-3 Kid with Ted DiBiase in a crybaby match, essentially. Well, the stipulation will become clear. It's a normal match. We'll get to it in a minute. We see clips from Superstars of the Kid hitting Razor Ramon over the back with a baby stroller or buggy, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. Then the following week with a guitar. Kid comes out pushing a stroller with a teddy bear in it. Apparently it's a Razor teddy bear because it's wearing a necklace. Kid twice attempts to rip the head off the bear, but he can't, so he just throws it at Razor. We start at a pace, Razor hitting some quick rights and sending Kid sprawling to the outside. Kid responds with a shoulder tackle. Kid goes to chop Razor. Razor turns it over, then sends Kid flying across the ring and then hits a fall-away slam. He sets for the Razor's edge, which the crowd pop for, but the Kid slips to the outside. Razor leans through the ropes. DiBiase throws some baby powder in his eyes. Apparently the ref didn't see it happen and couldn't deduce it from the clouds of powder afterwards. Kid hits a couple of quick leg drops and a top rope splash, but only gets 2. Kid goes for a sleeper. Razor fades, then rallies. Drives Kid back first into the turnbuckle, but Kid jumps on the back of his shoulders and reapplies the hold. The hold goes to the mat. Razor goes out and then rallies, crotches Kid on the top rope, and we have parity. The Kid breaks up a 10 count with a pin attempt. Razor kicks out. Kid hits a flying crossbody. Razor rolls it through and nearly gets a 3. The Kid then hits a spinning wheel kick for a 2. Razor hits a fall-away slam for a 2. Kid grabs some baby powder. Razor kicks it out of his hands. Hits the Razor's edge. Pins him, but pulls up at 2. He's been watching Too Cold Scorpio, clearly. Then hits another Razor's edge and wins the match. We'll come to the post-show match angle in a bit. Rory, what do you think of this?
Yeah, this definitely had its moments. These two clearly work well together. I thought the match was fairly well paced. They both looked good on offense, the Kid especially. I thought Razor timed his comebacks well. A couple of nice high spots that I enjoyed. And an emphatic enough finish, which I think this match and feud needed. And the right guy definitely went over, which was fine. But I thought they were both seemed to only be at about collectively 80% each. I think they could definitely have taken this up another gear if they'd wanted to. So it was a decent watch, a fair start to a pay-per-view. So Razor needed to win, and he did. But I felt they were holding something back throughout, and that let it down a little bit. But a worthwhile start to a pay-per-view.
Chris?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Rory. It did feel to me more like a TV match rather than a pay-per-view opener. It felt like they were holding something back. The storyline sort of angle between the two, this like Razor hasn't been able to get his hands on the Kid. That's been happening for a number of weeks, hasn't it? So considering the show's tagline, Rage in the Cage, you'd think like rather than a crybaby match, a cage match would work well. They just kind of went in there and had like a wrestling match. You wouldn't think that they'd been so involved with each other as former teammates and then turning on it for such a long period of time. Like it just felt like a wrestling match, and I didn't really want it to. And the other thing, the action was okay, but I didn't realise that baby powder was so debilitating. I thought it would have been a minor inconvenience, but seemingly taking some baby powder to the face, it knocks you straight to the floor.
I suppose it would. I wouldn't want it in the eyes, but yeah, I agree. It shouldn't send you sprawling to the mat and going all over the place. No, this. I think both these guys we've seen do better. I think as a collective, we would all say they're both collectively capable of more. Whether it was just the placement on the show in the opener, whether it was just a stipulation, and we'll come on to that more in a second. I think Rory's right. I think them at 80% is probably a good way to describe it. This was a weird match in the sense that I think had they have been able to maintain the action from the first and thirds of the match in the middle, it would have been a really good match. But I kind of thought this match was really let down by an extensively long pair of sleepers. I mean, I understand that that's a kind of something you'll lean on when you're putting together a wrestling match, but it didn't fit the match. It didn't feel like you generally apply a sleeper to calm a crowd down. They weren't that high to begin with, so I didn't think that worked. And then we get to this post-match angle. The ref hands Razor a giant baby bottle, which Razor pours over the kid. He then powders DiBiase before putting the diaper onto the kid. That was unnecessary, and Razor's facial expression to the crowd shows it. Kid is angry, and he smashes up the stroller. Rory, I don't think we can start this final bit better than Razor Ramon's kind of look through the hard camera and shrug.
Yes, I think, or I hope he was in on the joke on that one. And they say wrestling's cartoonish. This was, again, this what the stipulation was, and I can understand that, but this was going a little bit too far.
But what was the stipulation? What was the what was the idea that you get to humiliate your opponent? I guess.
I suppose so. That's all I can think of. I mean, I can't think of any other crybaby matches in history, and I hope we don't get any more after this. And I suppose, in a way, if you want to look at it, it kind of telegraphed the finish, because there's no way that the babyface is going to end up, wearing a diaper or a nappy or whatever you want to call it and being fed a baby bottle. I thought DiBiase probably played it best as well I think he was holding it together best, but I thought the kid's overacting, which in fairness he was probably told to do. It just didn't look right to me. It was unnecessarily humiliating, even given the kid's character alignment, and I didn't like it.
Chris, did you feel a bit of sympathy for the kid?
Yeah, I felt sympathy for everyone involved in the angle, to be honest. This brought, the match itself was fine. This was pretty terrible. It almost ruined the match, even though it was completely after it. We had such an emphatic finish, and then this happened, and I don't think anyone involved enjoyed it. It made me laugh throughout the match. Vince made a point of being like, the first ever crybaby match. I was like, no one cares. That's not a good thing. And
there's a good reason for that, yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I really didn't enjoy this angle. I felt sympathy for everyone involved.
No, there are some times where you watch the WWF and you feel like, this is for Vince McMahon's entertainment only. This was for Vince McMahon's entertainment only. I don't know that anybody else, viewer, performer, anybody enjoyed this. I don't know that anyone felt, you know what, this whole opening match segment was benefited because of this stipulation at the end. It didn't really matter. We're going to have forgotten about it next month. Well, maybe we won't, I suppose. But it's, what was the point was kind of my feeling. And, I think Razor summed it up best when he put the diaper on kid and he just looked at the hard camera and he just kind of shrugged and went, I know. That was a look that said, I know. And that's not the best thing. Anyway, Ray Rougeau is backstage with Sonny. And we move on to Hunter Hearst Helmsley with Elizabeth Hilton, just another model, against Duke the Dumpster Druzy in a rematch from the Royal Rumble free-for-all. We start at a pace. Druzy throws Helmsley across the ring by his hair. Druzy hits Helmsley with his lifting belt, then hits a 10 punch, while Helmsley manages to drop him on the turnbuckle. Hunter sets for the pedigree to a somewhat surprising lack of crowd reaction. Druzy slips out. Hunter whips Druzy into the ring steps. The pair stand up and threaten a back and forth. Hunter pokes him in the eye, then hits a nice high knee. A guy in the crowd has a sign that says, "Hello, USWA fans." Druzy hits the turnbuckle hard, manages to get a high boot in as a block. Hunter hits a neck breaker. Druzy hits a nice spine buster. Druzy hits a back body drop, screams towards the fans and gets a devastating wave of apathy in return. He then hits his trash compactor move, a sort of tilt and whirl power slam. Helmsley nearly landed on his head. Druzy grabs his trash can from the outside, gets it in the ring. The ref grabs the bottom bit, Hunter then grabs the lid and leathers Drewsy in the head. Not only does it make a rather loud noise, it actually flies off and nearly hits the referee, who doesn't score for a qualification, and Hunter wins the match. Chris?
I thought this is relatively harmless, considering the Duke the Dumpster Drozy character. I mean, that gimmick's not really going to propel him anywhere, but I thought he looked pretty good in this match, and Hunter certainly excels at selling, and he looked very good doing that in the early going of the match. The finish was slightly ridiculous, with the lid making a loud noise and, as you say, flying past the ref. But aside from that, I thought this was an average to good match, average to okay match. There's nothing wrong with it, really. The crowd was quite dead. It was a cheap finish, but yeah, meh, basically.
Rory, if they have plans to turn Hunter Hearst Helmsley into this Ric Flair type character, apparently, shouldn't he just be winning? Like, forget all the shenanigans. Like, I know it's the heel against the babyface, but it's a heel you got seemingly a lot invested in against the babyface that nobody cares about, and yet 2 shows in a row. Last month sort of made sense with the angle you were playing. Fair enough. He should have just beaten him out of sight here, surely.
Totally, absolutely right. I mean, where is Duke the Dumpster Drozy on the card? He's a superstar's jobber at best and has been for the last 2 years. I mean, Vince needs to realise, just because you're a heel doesn't mean you have to win every match by cheating. It's perfectly acceptable to win a match cleanly and still be a bad guy. And that is what should have happened here. Hunter should have just ran through Drozy in this one, but maybe a couple of hope spots and that's it. Instead, the match went on for about 10 minutes and it felt every bit of it. I wasn't as high on it as Chris was, I'm afraid. It was plodding, it bored me. The finish was very, very stupid and sports entertainment-y, and it doesn't help anybody. I didn't enjoy it at all. No,
the mechanics of the match were fine, but nobody cared. And it's a problem when you've got a babyface that basically just disappeared for the last 6 months of last year. And, you know, he's a bin man. That's not the kind of guy when you take, you know, you got children and you take them to a wrestling show. It's like, yeah, you cheer the garbage man. Like, don't do that. Mechanically this match was fine, other than Hunter nearly getting dropped on his head. I didn't really have a problem with it. But nobody cared. I didn't care. And you get to the end and you're like, really? We're doing this? We're protecting Hunter? Who knows? Let's move on. Anyway. You can buy jumpers for Undertaker, Bret, Diesel and Michaels for $29.95. They're selling them in one size fits all for adults and about 4 different youth sizes. A one size fits all jumper, have you seen some wrestling fans? Good luck with that.
Jim Cornette! For nearly 3 years, I stood in the shadows while you hot dog that spotlight. Well, it's my turn. Because I gave you the gold, and yet you get all the credit and all the money. And as far as you owe it, Art, the only gold you wore is when you hid behind me. Me! And British Bulldog, brother, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because this 650 pounds of bad attitude is gonna burn Camp Cornette down to the ground. Bye!
Speaking of one size fits all, we get a promo from Yokozuna. Yes, really. He says for nearly 3 years he stood in the shadows, busted a bloody big shadow. He's going to burn Camp Cornette to the ground. Rory, I don't know. I'd have had Yokozuna talking.
Not if he's going to talk like that. It was short. It got its point across. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I don't think it's too much of a problem. He needed to say something. I'd still like to know really.
Could he not have beaten a silent babyface?
Yeah, perhaps so. I'd be okay with that. I mean, we already know what his motive is. He's been kicked out of Camp Cornette and he's angry. Okay, we don't really need him to explain that. I agree, but I didn't have a problem with this promo. it was brief enough for it not to get to me.
Chris?
Yeah, I didn't really mind the promo. Obviously, there's nothing to see, but I didn't think it was particularly negative. But as Rory said, you already know what his motivations are, so you could have probably just had the heel speaking here, like get Cornette on the mic, and then he can talk about why he's been kicked out, and you build the angle up that way and keep Yokozuna silent if you really have to have a promo segment. But yeah, it wasn't good, but it was short enough to be passable.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this was a bad promo. I was actually kind of somewhat pleasantly surprised at how well he delivered it, relatively. But I had I just kind of got to the end and went, did that do more damage than it helped? I kind of think it might have. I mean, we are going to get Cornette in a promo later on, but I agree with Chris. I don't know that this would have been any worse. In fact, I suspect it would have been far better if we'd have heard from Cornette, saying we're going to, this is what we're going to do to Yokozuna, and this is why. Like, I don't know we'd learn much from Yokozuna. Like, it would have made more sense if we'd have found out from Cornette, even if it had been a load of shit, if we'd have found out from Cornette why he kicked Yokozuna out, and then we got a preview of the match. But anyway, it was fine. The British Bulldog is up next with Jim Cornette against Yokozuna. Yokozuna hits a body drop, then a couple of clotheslines. He goes for an elbow drop, but Bulldog moves. Yokozuna squashes him in the corner, then eyes up the bonsai drop, but Cornette pulls him free. He whips him into the ring post, charges at him, but Bulldog moves and he hits his head. Bulldog goes to the top and hits a flying something, lands on his feet, and Yokozuna takes a bump. Bulldog does try and knock Yoko off his feet, try the Yokozuna knock him off his feet spot, but he fails. Yokozuna hits a fallaway slam, which gets a pop from the crowd. Yokozuna hits a belly-to-belly suplex. Cornette comes into the ring, hits him with his tennis racket, and that's a disqualification. What a shit ending I've got. After the match, Yokozuna comes out after Cornette. Vader comes out, and he and Bulldog goes after Cornette. Yokozuna goes after Cornette. Vader comes out, and he and Bulldog lead a beatdown. Vader pulls out some handcuffs and they cuff him to the ropes. The whole thing has an amazing lack of heat. The attack continues until officials come out. Yokozuna does rally once or twice. This goes on forever. Chris?
Really nothing to see. From the match itself or from the post-match angle, that just went forever. It dragged and dragged. And the match, considering, how the finish to both this match and the main event, it makes the finish to the previous Hunter Hearst Helmsley match even more ridiculous, because it's just two cheap finishes in a row. There was no way anyone could possibly care about this. No one in the crowd did care about this. And then when you have a really prolonged beatdown afterwards, just no one cared. And at some point you should just call an audible, no one cares about this angle. It's been going for 5 minutes already. Let's not do 5 more. Let's get out of here. But it just went on. I have no positive words about this.
Rory?
No, me neither, I'm afraid. This was just tripe. Absolute tripe. Trying to find positives. I thought Yoko on offense was fairly decent. A couple of his moves looked okay, considering. But there was nothing to this at all. It was just 5 minutes of complete blah. And a really, really cheap, rubbishy ending, which was just, whacking him over the arse with a tennis racket. I mean, come on, how old are we? And then the beatdown, which wasn't really a beatdown, in which nothing really happened, and the crowd just didn't care. That is a bad sign for Yokozuna's babyface turn. This was just 10, 12 minutes of complete nothingness, and we're damn near 0 for 3 on this show at the moment.
Yeah, we're close. I actually saw it as a bad sign for Vader's heel run. I mean, I think I agree with that. In January they got it about right, and I was under the impression he was going to disappear for a few months, and I don't think that would have been a negative. I know to a point you might say, well, the iron might be hot for Vader in the immediate aftermath of getting suspended rather than a few months down the line. I wouldn't have brought him back for this. Now, yeah, alright, last month I said, more with curiosity, I kind of wouldn't have minded seeing Yokozuna and Vader, but I was thinking a Raw main event somewhere down the line. I don't know that I would have built this into this big program. Yokozuna's not in as we saw in the match, Yokozuna right now, I don't think he's in shape where he can do singles matches anymore. Admittedly, Bulldog's not the right opponent for him anyway. But this isn't the Yokozuna that was charging around the ring 2.5 years ago in matches against guys like Lex Luger and Bret Hart. Nothing of the sort. And yeah, the match was nothing special. The finish was something else. I mean, the finish was so lazy. Like, is that the best you've got? It's just Cornette just steps into the ring, lines Yokozuna up, and then just swaps him over the back. Like, there was no attempt at creativity at all. And yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, Chris, was it just a case that it was too early since Yokozuna turned for this to really have any impact?
I just don't know if he's that great a fit in general. Like, he just...
What, as a face?
Yeah, like, I don't know why people would be behind him. Like, I think he's much better suited to how he was before he turned. And yeah, I mean, this match, as you said, is bad. It looked bad for Vader as well, but I'm not sure I persist with the Yokozuna face turn after this.
Well, I don't think you can go back. I think we may have reached the point of no return, Rory.
Yeah, you can't switch Yokozuna back yet. That would just be a very obvious admission of defeat. It's a beatdown like that, or if a beatdown worthy of the name, we should have had the crowd howling and spitting, and they should have been furious and begging Yokozuna to try and make a comeback. But they just weren't. There was no heat on it whatsoever, as you say, for Vader either. And that is a bad sign. I think the problem, just briefly, is that we probably contradict what I said slightly earlier. Maybe we do need a couple more promos from Yokozuna, or at least about Yokozuna, because at the moment, people won't really get behind him because all we know is he's been kicked out of Camp Cornette. Is that enough of a reason to actually cheer him? Make it enough of a reason to cheer him. They haven't done that yet, and they better start doing that quick. We're off to a bad start.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it is a case of a lot of fans don't see him as a babyface yet. They just see him as an enemy of Cornette and Bulldog. And yeah, this was just a misstep, this entire bit. It was a bad match. We haven't really discussed the match to a great degree. There's not a lot to say, really. But that angle went on forever, and it's like, the longer it went, the less it connected. I kind of feel like if they'd have just beaten the piss out of him for 30 seconds and got run off by some babyfaces. Now, okay, I think for once there is a good explanation as to why Yokozuna didn't get any help, which is, well, he was a heel up until 2 weeks ago, so he may not have any friends. That kind of makes sense. But other than that, who knows? Goldust and Marlena are on the America Online chat. Goldust is getting quite touchy with the feelie with the typist. And next up, it's Owen Hart with Jim Cornette versus Shawn Michaels, with the winner facing the WWF champion at WrestleMania. Michaels comes out dancing on top of the In Your House set before rope swinging onto the R-Way. Like every match this evening, we seem to start before the bell. Shawn sends Owen tumbling to the outside and completes the rest of his ring entrance. This goes on forever. They exchange shoves and we get underway. Shawn slides through Owen's legs to the outside and high-fives some fans. They repeat the spot. This time Owen goes to the outside and goes to high-five some fans in the front row, but nobody wants to. Michaels then comes off the top and it's a lovely twisting crossbody. Michaels pulls on Owen's hair while Cornette distracts the ref. Michaels sends Owen down. They both do a kip up, and Michaels hits a Frankensteiner. Michaels runs at Owen, who hits the scoop slam. Owen sets for a sharpshooter, but Michaels fires him off. Jerry Lawler tries to calm Owen and tries to claim Owen invented the camel clutch, which he currently has Shawn in. Owen then floors Shawn with a knee. He goes for a bridge pin for a 2. Owen levels Shawn with a heel kick. Shawn falls to the outside. Michaels suplexes Owen off the apron, but Owen lands on his feet. Michaels flies at Owen, who catches him a lovely power slam onto the matting. Owen goes to the top, hits a high angle drop kick for a 2. Owen fires Shawn off the turnbuckle, then levels him with a speedy clothesline. Owen gets a shot, Shawn in the sharpshooter. Michaels, after a struggle, gets to the ropes. Owen shoots some snot at Shawn's direction. Shawn nearly sneaks in a pin, but Owen hits an enziguri, sending him tumbling to the outside. Shawn is spark out, and they're saying that's the same enziguri that knocked him out on Raw a few months ago. Owen, rather than take the count out, brings Shawn back into the ring to pin him, but Shawn barely kicks out. Owen charges at Shawn in the corner, jumps in, but Shawn moves and he basically crotches himself on the ring post. Shawn does a kip up, rallies, hits Owen with a flying forearm, then a body slam. Climbs to the top, hits the top rope elbow drop, then knocks Cornette off the canvas. He goes for the sweet chin music super kick. Owen ducks, Shawn spins him around, and this time he hits him. He pins him, gets the 3, and the crowd pop big. Rory.
0 for 4. Only joking. This was fab. It was everything I hoped it would be. From the little character bits at the beginning with the high five, not high five, into the action, which was just beautiful to watch. These two just meshed. They just couldn't have meshed any better. The work was fantastic. Their counters were brilliant. Their timing was on. They both broke out some new spots from them that we don't normally see. The spots that we don't normally see in a WWF ring. I mean, things like rolling prawn holds. They're very, very rare. You've seen in this element of North America, and they just made it look as natural as anything. It was beautiful. I've used that word twice. It was that kind of match. They just clicked, and I was with them from the first bell to the last. And that ending sequence, where they were both fighting over their finisher, knowing it's as if it reminded me of Virtua Fighter on the Sega Saturn, which both characters are down to 1% of energy. You know, just you're battling to hit one big move and you will get the win. And in the end, Shawn just eked it out. This was absolutely fantastic, and boy, did this show need it. Absolutely brilliant stuff.
Chris?
I agree with pretty much everything Rory just said. With the 3 matches we've had preceding this, that crybaby stipulation, then the dumpster match, and that prolonged beatdown, interest was waning, but Shawn's entrance alone was wonderful, and it really set the tone for this match. And as soon as he comes out with that entrance, it's running down to the ring, sliding in, cleaning house, and then finishing his entrance, little things like that. There's no way you could be like, it made you sit up watching it, like, and I was interested, I was excited again. It just from him coming out, and then the match delivered pretty much on every level. I really enjoyed little things like the high five spots, where Owen and Cornette are complaining about hair pulling. So Cornette starts arguing with the ref, so Shawn really blatantly pulls the hair for the crowd. Things like that, and the action backed it up. The finishing sequence was, as Rory said, that was really great. That was everything about this match was great. And if Shawn goes on to win the title at Mania, this is definitely, you could throw this match for the title as like the main event of an In Your House down the road, because the work between these two was wonderful. If you need a title match for 1 month, you could come back to this program, and Owen, being a heel, could demand a title shot. Basically, just run this storyline again. Owen's the one who injured him, and he didn't get a fair shot. He wants a shot at the title, and you could. I thought this was great.
Yeah. To deal with a couple of small negatives. Firstly, Shawn said before this match, both on Raw and I think on the show itself, that this was the most important match of his career, e.g., WrestleMania is my ultimate goal. This stands in the way between me and Mark McGoal. Therefore, it's one of, if not the most important match I'm ever going to wrestle so far. Fair enough. I then wonder why in the first 2 minutes of the most important match of your career that you're jogging around ringside, high-fiving fans, high-fiving Vince McMahon. It was really entertaining, but it didn't fit. It was more the case that I didn't think it was a bad idea. I just felt like you were making a lie of yourself for what you were saying before. This wasn't the biggest match of your career, I don't think. But if you don't treat it like that, then I just think you're making it up when you talk that way. So there's that. There was also the repeat of the the Raw collapsed kick that Owen did, which made a lot of sense as a spot. I even liked when, Shawn was kind of spark out at 5, and then Owen goes to the outside and pulled him back in because he wanted the pinfall victory rather than the count out. But I questioned then why Shawn, with apparently being spark out, would then climb back in the ring and all of a sudden be fine. That was certainly a negative. I kind of was thinking they were going to explain it as he was playing possum. They haven't done that yet, certainly not on the show or on the Raws that followed. That all being said, this was a lot of fun. These two are excellent. My criticisms about the kind of histrionics at the start, the bit where Owen slides through Shawn's legs, goes to the outside and goes to high-five some fans and nobody follows, was absolutely brilliant. The action is really good. This match isn't that long. That's probably the one thing that undercuts it being a great match. It's only about 14 or 15 minutes. But they went from pretty much from the opening few minutes to the end of the bell, told a good story. The last couple of minutes were excellent. Again, Shawn did belie some of the selling, but these two are great. Shawn's fantastic, and we are going to talk about Bret in a minute, not getting the kind of, send-off's the wrong word, not getting the kind of build-up to a WrestleMania main event that he needs. But Rory, this is perfect for Shawn.
Oh, absolutely. In every way, from a character perspective, kayfabe and non-kayfabe. And having a highly competitive, compelling match with somebody as good as Owen, puts him right up there, right in the eyes of the fans as well. And I think now people are really going to buy him as in every sense of the phrase, number one contender to the WWF title, and quite rightly so, in my opinion.
Chris, anything more?
No, just, I agree with the negative points you made about the match, but I think just Shawn, Owen's great too, but Shawn's just so charismatic. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but that...
It's one of the words, I think.
I kind of give him a pass, almost, because it's just because of how... When wrestlers do things that don't fit the story in their matches, it usually really grates with me, but with Shawn, I just find him so entertaining that I kind of let it go.
Yeah,
he gets away with it because he's brilliant, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I would have let it go if the story would have kind of been that Shawn was playing possum. Now, okay, it may not have made sense had the ref got to say an 8 count and Owen hadn't have bailed Shawn out. But other than that, I think it would have made a lot of sense. But Shawn pretending to be Spark Out, in theory being Spark Out, and then rallying back, it took the edge off. But still, he is so good, and we will discuss him a bit more later in the show. We now get to them killing time while they set up the cage. Out comes Roddy Piper on the interview stage.
Okay, he comes from the Rocky Mountains, obviously inbred, okay? Somebody ought to tell Vader that thing he wears on his face should tell him that that's not where your jockstrap goes.
There's only one Roddy Piper. There's only one.
However, in the case of Vader, maybe that's where it belongs, because he's nuts. But you 520 pounds, big tough bully, right? You see, I wouldn't suspend you. I'm not that stupid of a president. That was the board of directors. No. I'm going to keep you around, Vader. You think you're a big tough guy, 520 pounds.
Let me tell you one thing right now.
Shut up!
Whoa. That's Clarence Mason.
You'll get sued.
When you come up here with me, mister, first thing you do is have a lot of respect. Now, I ain't finished. You... Tell me something. When you were a little kid, is that a tennis racket or a banjo? Does da-dun-dun-dun mean anything to you, huh? Did you used to sit on a porch and play the banjo? Is that how you got Vader, huh?
Let me explain something to you, Hot Rod. You come out here and make all the statements you want that they got a time with a calendar instead of a stopwatch, and you're a real funny guy. But I remember Hot Rod used to come out with a shirt on him said no fear. And I remember Hot Rod used to come out and say he wasn't scared of nothing that ever happened to him because he's been through it all. You were on the streets when you were a kid and nobody could scare you.
You betcha.
But there was one man that did. Whoa. He scared you, and he scared the World Wrestling Federation, and he scared everybody out there, and he scared every wrestler that stepped in that ring, and that was Vader.
Wait.
So what did Vader do? He scared everybody. So what did the WWF do? You tried to banish him. You tried to exile him, send him away. He's too hot. We can't touch him. He was Hot Vader, not Hot Rod. But thanks to this man, Vader is back. So now you're sending a 640-pound man. And you think that he's gonna take Vader out. Well, I got news for you. WrestleMania 12, Anaheim, California. What's gonna happen to Yokozuna and the rest of the World Wrestling Federation?
Whoa.
It's on your head, Hot Rod.
Have you ever thought of something, anything? However, think about this for a second. You had Yokozuna. You're one a great manager. You had him, correct?
That's right.
Now you have Vader, correct?
That's right.
Yokozuna is 640 pounds. To me, that's about 320 pounds per cheek. Do you know what? In WrestleMania 12 at Anaheim, if Vader loses, you might find yourself cheek to cheek with Yokozuna.
Are you gonna...
Well, there's only one Hot Rod.
Bottom line is, buddy, you're going to be out of a job, and at WrestleMania, we're going to see people that are going to fight.
Piper manages to pop the crowd by telling them what they already know. That is, Michaels is the number one contender for the title. He also seems to be pushing the idea that it's this is Shawn's title shot, i.e. the only one. It's not the first time they've ignored his match with Diesel from last year. Piper says he's not stopping it until there's a winner. He calls Yokozuna dumb. He's big enough where he should be able to deal with it. He then calls Vader inbred before saying about his mask, that's not where your drop strap goes, or maybe that's where it belongs. Piper wants Yokozuna against Vader. Out comes Cornette and Clarence Mason. Cornette cuts a great promo, says that Vader is the one everybody fears. Piper implies that if Vader loses at Mania, Cornette might find himself cheek to cheek with Yokozuna. Chris, what do you think of this?
It felt they were killing time, and it felt like it to me. It almost felt like Piper had gone out there and he knew vaguely what he was going to say, but he flip-flopped quite a lot, and I don't know. It felt like it was killing time because it was. I didn't really enjoy this.
Rory?
Yeah, I watched this twice, and I liked it a lot less on the second viewing. I think I was just, into the fact that this was without a doubt, two of the greatest talkers in wrestling going at it on the mic for about 8-10 minutes. But watching it again, there wasn't really a massive amount of substance there, and they clearly were just throwing them out there to entertain the live crowd while the cage was being set up, which is fine. I'd rather have that than another 10 minutes of shilling one-size-fits-all T-shirts. But they ended up repeating themselves a bit, going round the houses. It was okay. Again, I didn't lose too much sleep over it, but it wasn't great as a real, say, for example, 15-minute back and forth on a Raw with these two could have been.
If we go back 18 months, I think, to SummerSlam 94, where they were, I think, both setting up and setting down the cage. Of course, famously, Bret and Owen wasn't the final match on that show. You can thank Undertaker and Undertaker for that. They had a lot of time to stall on that show, and I don't think they did a very good job of it. You'll remember the, what was it? It was the trying to solve the case, the fake Undertaker.
Oh,
actually not even solved. Those segments we got. I thought this was really good. As someone who hasn't seen a lot of Piper, I know I should have done, but Piper's just kind of before my time. Seeing his kind of promos anyway, he was so smooth to a point, a lot of even good promos don't transition points very well, and they could often say good things, but not in the most natural way. Piper, I thought, was just incredibly smooth with his delivery and getting all of his points across, and he was entertaining enough. And then, there is certainly something to be said for Piper and Cornette being, I don't know whether dream promo showdown is necessarily the right way of putting it, but certainly two guys who are two of the best talkers of their generation. Now, you're right, it wasn't the most meatiest segment. Certainly it was a segment that was designed to build time, but I thought Piper did a really good job of it. Setting up the Yokozuna Vader thing. He did also promise a bloodbath, for WrestleMania, which I don't think people are going to be happy with, and we will have elaborated a bit more on that in part one, with regards to, what the, major promotions are doing with regards to blood, at the moment. But no, I thought this was really good. It was a good way of transitioning time, and I've seen far worse in terms of when segments have got to be filled. We will have reviewed it on the Super Bowl show with WCW trying to fill time midly for a very different reason. And I thought this was good, but we'll move on to the main event. It's Diesel against Bret Hart for the WWF Championship inside of a steel cage. Diesel starts out in the ascendancy, firing Bret across the ring into the turnbuckle. Bret blocks Diesel by trying to ram him into the ring post with one of his own. Bret makes the first escape attempt. Diesel follows him up and they battle on the top turnbuckle. On the mat, Diesel drives Bret into the cage and orders the door open. As is typical, Diesel takes ages just to walk out and Bret cuts him off. Bret makes an escape attempt, but Diesel pulls him back. Bret then starts working on Diesel's leg. The crowd is dead silent. Bret tries to escape over the cage on one side, Diesel via the door on the other. Bret realises he's fighting a losing battle, runs over and cuts Diesel off. Bret goes up by one of the corners. Diesel throws him back into the ring and then hits a belly-to-back suplex. Bret just starts beating on Diesel's leg. Diesel whips Bret into the turnbuckle. It makes it sound like a gunshot. The crowd wake up for that. Bret makes a beeline over the top of the cage. Diesel pulls him back by his hair. They go back to the turnbuckle spot. Less noise, less heat. On the replay, Lawler implores us to listen to the sound, which was a good idea, except the fact the replay was silent. Bret goes for a sharpshooter. Diesel fights it, then pokes Bret in the eye. Bret tries to escape over the corner. Diesel punches him in the groin, and Bret crotches himself on the top rope. Both men fall down into the ring. Diesel still is towards the door. Bret tries to stop him. Diesel kicks him off. Diesel goes to leave. A hand appears through the ring canvas. It's gloved. It's the Undertaker. He grabs a hold of Diesel and pulls him under. Bret then beelines it over the cage and wins the match. Afterwards, Diesel reappears, scarpers up over the cage. Undertaker circles in the ring. And then, as the show goes off the air, Undertaker does this weird eagle-like wing pose on top of the cage. The light goes out as the show goes off the air. Rory, what do you think of this?
I really, really wanted to like this, but I couldn't quite get there. It definitely had its moments. I thought Bret's selling, when required, was, again, just sensational. It just had me thinking that the guy was on his legitimate last legs. He does so many things brilliantly in the ring. I still don't think he gets enough credit for his selling. And this match needed it because, again, I don't really think, as weird as it sounds, considering the guy is 7 foot tall and 300 pounds, I don't think anybody legitimately saw Diesel winning this match for whatever reason. And it's just set in stone we're going to get Bret Shawn at WrestleMania. And I think even the marks in the audience weren't really with Diesel. I think that's why there were so many spots, which should have been big crowd spots, were just met by silence. They repeated a few things as well, like you said, which didn't help. 20 minutes was probably a bit too long for what they were going for. And whilst the ending was a fantastic visual when they showed Undertaker coming up through the ring, which I thought looked fantastic, it just made your WWF champion look like third wheel. And if that's going into WrestleMania of all places, that doesn't seem like a good decision. So it had its moments, mainly thanks to Bret being Bret, but didn't get to the heights that on another day in another place it could have reached, which is a shame because I've liked all the matches these two have had against each other.
Chris?
I actually like this match slightly more than you two. It was, on reflection, slightly cyclical. I guess most cage matches are, but it's like big move, one guy goes to escape really slowly, and then someone suddenly revives, blocks the attempt, and then you hit another big move. And I don't know, the crowd was slightly dead for this. But the match itself, I kind of enjoyed. I thought it was fine. But then the finish really, really annoyed me. Like, I don't understand why you need to build Diesel and Taker at the expense of Bret, who's going to be the defending WWF champion at WrestleMania. Sorry. I thought there's enough protection in Diesel. Like, you don't want to beat Diesel without interference, but there's enough protection in the fact that it's a cage match and Bret can win by escaping the cage and no one has to pin Diesel. And the other thing, Diesel must have been slightly screwed, because when he got pulled through the ring floor, he's got a case that both of his feet hit the floor underneath the ring. Diesel's been screwed here. He should have won the match. But if you really want to build Undertaker and Diesel, then have Bret win the match by escaping the cage, and then have Taker come through the ring and attack Diesel and pull him down through into the ring to end the show. After the match, I just didn't understand. We'd already had 2 cheap finishes in the Duke the Jumps the Josie match and with the Yokozuna match as well. And it really, really ruined the match for me, and it brought an end to the show, an otherwise decent show to it tarnished and tainted the whole thing for me.
I think they were on to something with the finish that they had in mind, or at least an angle that they had in mind. But I don't think they got it quite right. It was less the fact that Undertaker pulled Diesel through the ring. The image in my head I've got of that is that the minute it happened, Bret just escaped up the side of the cage. And it didn't seem like a babyface thing to do. I don't know what Bret would have done. I don't know what the babyface thing in that situation would have been. But if you're Bret who's trying to win a match cleanly, I don't know that your instinct when something was happening to Diesel would have been, I'm just going to leg it. I don't know that was the best idea. I don't know how you would have played it out. I think Chris makes a good point. That might have been better served as a post-match angle. The match itself was, I won't say a big disappointment because I wasn't particularly high on it going in, but the escape the cage thing really doesn't suit babyfaces. In the sense that I remember it was much more stark in the Bret and Owen match that I referenced, from SummerSlam 94, when you've got Bret in this big blood feud against Owen. He's trying to win a match by running away. It didn't really make any sense, that. And also it makes all of the stuff you do in the ring kind of feel redundant. There's what's the point? Why am I attacking him for? I know the idea is I'm trying to disable him long enough that I can escape, but I can escape via the door. It shouldn't take that long. This match was a disappointment. No crowd heat at all. And Rory, as we've said, that's 2 months in a row now that Bret Hart, your champion, has played second fiddle to the wider story of getting Diesel and Undertaker over. I don't know that it's working. I don't know that the Undertaker Diesel feud is all that much better off. I feel like if this is a zero-sum game, Bret has lost detrimentally a large amount versus what the other two have gained.
He has, absolutely, especially like we said earlier, they are absolutely pushing Shawn to the moon and making him look like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Whereas Bret, despite actually main eventing pay-per-views for a change, has squeaked by the last two, looking, or being made to look at least, extremely weak by the end in both main events. So if you judge it by that criteria, there's only one person who's winning at WrestleMania, and it's not helping Bret. And we'll probably get onto this a bit more in the future of this pod today. I don't think it's helping the match either, which is a major worry for me.
No, I mean there is always the kind of belief that Bret might be bulletproof enough, where he. I
hope so.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to bank on it, but I feel like Bret more than most could probably absorb all of this and just take it. I mean, after all, he's still the champion. He did win the match. True. It's more of a presentation thing than anything else. It's not that Bret won this match thanks to Diesel, being screwed by Undertaker. It was just more that the closing show angle was Diesel and Undertaker. Bret just disappeared.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. I don't know how else you could have done it. That's what I mean. I just feel like there was a way out that involved the idea you had that could have made Bret more of a focal point. I guess we should discuss this now, again, that we're not going to discuss it, in the remainder of the show. Chris, what do you think of the Undertaker and Diesel build? As much as I say, I think, Bret's been hampered more than these guys have been helped. I think from their point of view, this build was quite good. The close show angle with Diesel kind of reappearing through the ring, escaping up the R-way, Undertaker kind of posing like an eagle really on the top turnbuckle. I thought worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a benefit to those two. That they're getting a lot of their angle is being prioritised over the champion and over the championship in a lot of instances, as you say, over the last 2 months, and that's a credit to them, I suppose. I'm not sure how well it's paying off. I don't know that this is a particularly over rivalry between the two men, despite the sort of heavy promotion that's gone into it. But it certainly, they're trying, and that's positive. If you take it away from ruining the match and all the issues with the finish, Taker coming up through the ring was a great visual, and him in the ring as Diesel runs away to close the show was also like a really good visual as well. So it's certainly helping build the match from my perspective, but I'm not sure how widespread that positivity is.
No, we'll hear more about it in the TV report in a minute. I think some of the stuff they did on the Raw, following this was quite effective too. Kind of Diesel wrestles a match with Bob Holly, and he's looking at the canvas waiting for when Undertaker's going to appear. And there's another really good angle where during an Undertaker match, I think it's with Tatanka, Diesel comes out with an axe, and you're thinking, what the hell's he doing with this? And he takes the cameraman hostage, and then just goes backstage and just starts, kicking the crap out of a casket. I think the angle's quite creative, and I'm quite intrigued. I'm more intrigued by an Undertaker match than I have been in a long time. I'm more intrigued by a Diesel match than I have been in a long time, which is testimony to them both. Rory, your overall thoughts on the show and a score rating out of 10.
I actually enjoyed it more watching it than I have now just actually talking about it again. I sounded really, really down on this show, and I didn't want to be, like I said during the main event. The things I wanted to like, apart from the Owen-Shawn match, which was sensational, things I went in hoping to like, I didn't really. The things I went in knowing I wouldn't like, I also didn't really. But I've got to try and take into account the fact that this is a placeholder show. It doesn't really pretend to be a big pay-per-view. And we were treated to one truly fantastic match, definite early match of the year candidate, which everybody must seek out if you get the chance. So, mainly with that taken into consideration, I've ifed and ammed about this, but I'm going to go for a 5.5, and I might be being a little bit generous there, but let's go with that for now.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as Rory. I actually thought I quite enjoyed this show, and talking about it, I just realised how little I enjoyed it, really. Apart from Shawn and Owen, everything else was completely missable. And I think because of how much I enjoyed that match when watching the show, I kind of forgot how little I enjoyed the opening hour. So it's a really difficult one to give a score rating out of 10 for, because obviously that match in itself was wonderful, but the show overall, I think a 5 is probably about right. I'll give it a 5, but the high point in the Shawn Owen match was wonderful, but everything else, there's really nothing to see. And considering it's the pay-per-view before WrestleMania, I know it is a B-level pay-per-view, I suppose, but I would have liked to. I know the closing angle was Diesel and Taker, and we've spoken about that, but I would have liked more to have been said about how, look, we now have our main event and it's Bret versus Shawn, but Bret just went over the cage, went out of there. So it's a really mixed bag for me, but the highs were great and the lows they weren't terrible, but missable and of no real interest, so about 5.
No, I know what you mean. We've seen swathes of bad hours from WWF and WCW on pay-per-view in the last year or two. I don't think this first hour was anywhere near as bad as some of the stuff we've seen. I would certainly call it forgettable, but as much as we were critical of some of the Razor and 1-2-3 Kid stuff, that was still one of the better openers we've seen from either company. Either company, trying to be bad at DDP. Well, maybe WCW had some very good. WCW had some very good openers in the last year or so. But in terms of WWF opening matches, that was certainly nowhere near the worst. And I don't think even Bulldog and Yokozuna, as bad as it was, I've seen far worse stretches essentially. But yeah, I'll give this a 5.5. in a sense that there's nothing on this show that is a 5.5. I thought Piper and Cornette was very, very good. Shawn and Owen was very, very good. And the rest of the show wasn't particularly good. But the closing angle with Undertaker and Diesel was good as well. But yeah, I would turn the show on at the beginning of Shawn and Owen, and I would probably turn it off at the end of Piper and Cornette. That would be where I'd finish a 5.5 out of 10.
The two greatest athletes in the history of the World Wrestling Federation going at it at Wrestlemania. Now the question is, Shawn Michaels, in your mind, do you believe that the Hitman Bret Hart is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be?
No way!
First of all, I would like to say that there is not a person in this building that has more respect for this man right here than Shawn Michaels.
What?
I most definitely believe that the Hitman is the best there was. And I suppose that only time will tell, because I can't foresee the future, but I believe he may possibly be the best that there ever will be. But the one thing I do have to question, and again, with all due respect to you, Bret, I can't believe in my own heart that right now, at this time, in 1996, that you are the best there is, because I believe that that spot is owned by the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Everyone has to have confidence.
Here we go.
Confidence, unquestionably a very important part, Bret Hart, of your reign as the WWF champion. And indeed, how do you size up your challenger?
Well, with all due respect, Shawn Michaels, I think you're one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever had the privilege of watching. And I know that in the last 5 months being the World Wrestling Federation champion, without a doubt, have been the hardest 5 months of my career. And I've taken a lot of punishment from some big guys. And it's awful tough wrestling guys that are 6'9" and 7 feet tall. But no matter what, I really, really look forward to an opportunity to step in the ring and show exactly why it is that I am the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Oh, listen to these people. You know, there's a lot of people that misunderstand things. It's not my job to beat you. Being the World Wrestling Federation champion, it's your job to beat me. Now, in this match, Shawn Michaels, I just want you to understand one thing, because, like I say, I got nothing but respect for you. I think you're great. But once this bell rings, once they sound that bell, I'm going to hit you with everything but the kitchen sink, and you're in for the biggest dogfights you've ever seen in your whole life.
I think everyone would concur with that, and unquestionably with that in mind, conditioning, both mentally as well as physically, will play a huge part in this match.
Well, certainly conditioning will, and I know that he has had nothing but tough opponents, one after another. But you know something? I haven't done so bad myself lately. I've been beat up by 9 thugs. I've been beat up by 7-foot people. And you know something? I'm still standing here looking as good as I ever have.
We return to Raw on February the 19th with Sonny once again on the beach. This is going to take a while to get old. We see a mention for the Ultimate Warrior and also a teaser for Larry Fling Almost Live. We open with Razor Ramon against Goldust for the Intercontinental title. Marlena blows smoke in Razor's face for the match, which angers him. At one stage, Razor Ramon does the fall-away slam to Goldust, sending him over the top rope to the outside. The match ends by count-out as Goldust and Marlena scarper up the R-way. Razor said, "Goldust, I don't want your belt. I want your ass." He then comments about the return of the Great One. I actually thought he was referencing Warrior here, but it turns out he was referencing, and I quote, Roddy Rowdy Piper. Razor tells Piper that he doesn't want his kids watching this kind of stuff on TV. Presumably he wants them watching Nitro instead. He wants Piper to make a match with him and Goldust. Goldust, let's have a date. Vader comes out and lays waste to Barry Horowitz and Aldo Montoya. We get a video package showing the Ultimate Warrior. Next up is the Ringmaster against Marty Jannetty. Vince describes Ringmaster as being stone cold twice during the match, which plays into the character change they're reportedly considering for him this month. Ringmaster submits Jannetty with a $1 Million Dream submission. We get a promo from Mankind. Why did God create all of you normal and forget so many parts of me? He's playing with a rat during this promo. Diesel comes out during the main event between Tatanka and The Undertaker with an axe. He takes a cameraman hostage. Backstage, he takes the axe to the casket. It takes him a while, but Diesel does a good job on the casket, obliterating it. Undertaker is selling at the stage in which the match, which is quite some timing. He then gets up and does an awful chokeslam, followed by a tombstone for the win. The video only comes with the video wall after the match, so Taker only takes off afterwards. We join Larry Fling on Larry Fling Live with Billionaire Ted. The caption reads, "Billionaire Ted owns just about everything." We then take calls from Randy from Sarasota and Terry from Florida, who tells Ted he needs to miss work next Monday. He got hit by a high-heeled shoe. Pushed on the topical issues, Ted is lost for words. Another graphic comes up that says, "Billionaire Ted, corporate predator." Raw goes off the air with Bearer telling Diesel he will pay for what he did to the casket. Raw on February the 26th opens with Isaac the Yankum DDS against Jake the Snake Roberts, or as Vince McMahon called it, the DDS versus the DDT. Yankum attempts a DDT, but Roberts drops it. Robert hits his own for a big pop and wins the match. Diesel wrestles Bob Holly, but he's distracted waiting for Undertaker to pop out of the ring, which is a nice touch. We cut back from the break just in time to see Diesel pin Holly with a jackknife. He's clearly spooked by the threat of the Undertaker, although he does his finger wobbling taunt at the end. As Diesel walks up the ramp, Undertaker's gong hits and the light goes out. When they come back on, Undertaker's in the ring. Diesel actually fancies a fight, so he starts moving back towards the ring, but the lights go out again, and when they come back on, Undertaker is gone. They go out again, they come back on again, and now he's on the video wall. Undertaker says he's the master of mind games. Masked Shinobi, who's actually Al Snow, gets beaten up by Ahmed Johnson. Goldust calls in and does a poem for President Roddy Piper. We get another promo from Mankind. The rat is called George. Mankind is in agony. He's able to relieve that pain, which is good for him, but not so enjoyable for us. Leave the light on, I'm coming home. Next up is an in-ring segment with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Shawn applauds Bret to the ring. Shawn says there isn't a person in the building that has more respect for Bret than Shawn Michaels. The Hitman is certainly the best there was, and maybe he will be the best there ever will be, but he does have to question whether he is the best there is. Bret says it's awful tough wrestling guys that are 6'9" and 7 feet tall. Bret seems to be getting a mixed crowd reaction here. Bret says it isn't his job to beat Shawn, it's Shawn's job to beat him. Shawn says he's been through a lot recently, but they could sit there and blow smoke all evening. On his conditioning, Shawn just shows off his chest. Bret says he's like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps on going and going and going and going. Out comes Roddy Piper. Piper says his job as president is to represent the fans. Piper says he doesn't like it when people boo Bret Hart. He did not see that coming. One time I heard this guy beat Roddy Piper. I don't know. I wasn't there. Piper says he wants a winner in this match, and if we're talking about conditioning, Shawn's abs don't mean nothing. Anyone can have a lucky night and catch a fall, so it's not going to be a one-fall match. The man that can get the most falls on the other man will win. Shawn wants to know how long the match will be. Piper screams, 1 hour. Piper says you might as well shake each other's hands because you're going to hate each other after this. We finish with Yokozuna in a handicap match against the British Bulldog and Owen Hart. Yokozuna fights them off, but Vader comes out, clotheslines Yokozuna and causes the disqualification. Outruns Ahmed Johnson, who levels Owen Hart, and Jake Roberts with a snake. Larry Fling Live is back, this time with the Huckster and the Nacho Man. This is shown on BNN, the Billionaire News Network. Fling says these two take him back to his childhood. Nacho Man says he's only as old as he feels, and he feels pretty old. Billionaire Ted joins us by a satellite hookup. Huckster goes to hit Fling with a chair after he calls him old, but Larry scares him off with a lady's shoe. Huckster gets angry at a few home truths from Nacho Man, cleans house with some soft chair shots to end the show.
Once again, I guess you and I could sit here and blow smoke at each other because we do have a lot of respect for each other. But the fact of the matter is, you want to know about conditioning? Well, let me ask you something. Take a look at that. Does it look like I'm in the best condition of my life, or is it just my imagination?
There's no question. You're going to have to give it your all, as you have so many, many times before, Bret Hart. What kind of shape are you going to be in?
We ever see that little pink rabbit on those Energizer commercials?
The Energizer Bunny.
I just keep going and going and going.
Hey, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen, the president of the World Wrestling Federation.
What's he doing
here? Ladies and gentlemen, Roddy Piper.
Something's fitting to happen. Whenever this guy shows up, something happens. And it's not always good either.
Piper? May I please? Thanks. Go have yourself a seat.
He's got a seat, all right.
You know, first of all, I was listening, and my job as the president of the WWF is to represent you people and make sure you get a fair shake on every fight that's coming up in WrestleMania 12 on the 31st in Anaheim. And the first thing that I do not like is when they announce Bret Hart's name, I hear people boo.
Yeah,
you don't boo a guy like this. Hang on. I didn't come here to say what's popular. I come here to tell the truth. You don't boo a guy that's been 3 times world champion. Why, one time I even heard this guy beat Roddy Piper. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Oh, right.
You don't boo a guy like this. This kid his whole life has been dying to win the World Wrestling Federation title, has done everything in his power, has been on the mat, has grappled ever since he's been this high for this one chance. But I'll tell you something. There's something that everybody's missing, because March 31st, Anaheim is the night to fight. If I'm the WWF president, there's going to be a winner here. There ain't going to be no kind of tight pulling, no DQs, nothing like that.
Well,
you're talking about conditioning. First of all, you don't judge a book by its cover. So yes, you got wonderful abs. That don't mean nothing.
That's right.
You've been beat up a couple of times. You know, it's time. Anybody can have a lucky night and catch a fall. So this is the way it's going to be in your match for the WWF title. It's not a one-fall match. It's the man that can get the most falls on the other man will become the WWF champion. Do you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that.
Do you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem. How long of a match are we talking about?
You hear this, McMahon?
Yes, I've just joined you again here on headset, and
1 hour.
Whoa!
Oh my goodness!
No timeouts, no nothing, because I gotta tell you something. These two guys right here can perform, and there's somebody that's gonna make them, and that's me. March 31st, Anaheim, the one who gets the most falls wins this belt. Until then, boys, you might as well shake hands now, because you're gonna hate each other after that.
Now we will start our discussion for the month looking at Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. We'll preview the match itself in a minute. A 1 hour most full wins match at WrestleMania. Chris, we'll start with the promo on Raw. What did you think?
I quite enjoyed it, but I don't think it was the type of promo that is suitable for showcasing the biggest match on the biggest show of the year. It was heavily focused on mutual respect, and the whole promo felt very colloquial. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was very relaxed, the whole situation. A lot of handshakes, a lot of compliments, and that to me, when the match is an hour, there's no real heat to it, and I know they're focusing on like the conditioning aspect, and how both men can handle the stipulation, and it's about in-ring work rate and things like that, but I would like more almost storyline build on it. It seems weird to me that months or weeks even after Shawn declared he was coming back for the Royal Rumble against doctor's orders, they're building a match around in-ring conditioning, and it doesn't really fit. The promo itself was fine. Actually, it was better than fine. I enjoyed it, I have to say. It just didn't fit what it was building for me.
Rory?
Yes, it probably was just a little bit too pally-pally. I see where they were going with it, because these are the two now biggest baby faces in the company. Well, give or take Undertaker. Two biggest baby faces in the company, having a 60-minute match against each other. I think you're great. No, I think you're great. I think you're really great. Okay, I get where they're going with it, but they pushed that button a bit too hard. I wouldn't have had a problem if they'd had a piece each, said something like that, and then somebody, maybe Shawn, would have just upped the ante a tiny little bit and just got the crowd to go, ooh, and maybe even get Vince to recoil a little bit. I don't mind the mutual respect angle necessarily, but the match still needs a bit more to it than that, in my opinion. Although having said that, right at the very, very end, when they did the big handshake theme, just at the end there was a bit where they just held on to the handshake for just a tiny bit too long. I thought, okay, maybe they might just go somewhere with this, but then they just smiled and made nice again afterwards. So I hope that was just the first of a good few promos or vignettes we're going to get to build this match. Off to a decent start, but they can't mind this particular angle over and over again. People will get bored of it very quickly, and you shouldn't be getting bored of a match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, for goodness sake.
No, we've got to give them something in saying that there will be, I think, 4 more Raws between now and WrestleMania, so there are plenty of places you can take this, and you can certainly build up animosity over a number of weeks, as we saw with Bret and with Diesel heading into Survivor Series. They did quite a good job there of building up what were essentially two baby faces into some quite contrasting and polarizing kind of camps. It was a bit odd though, the emphasis on conditioning. You understand why they did it, like, if you're going to promote an Iron Man type match, that was what Vince McMahon called it at the end of Raw, this kind of 1 hour length match. You're going to promote that kind of thing. Yes, it makes sense to talk about who's the best conditioning, but it doesn't make sense to talk about it much before you announce the match. Like, I don't know why there was such an emphasis on conditioning. It's not like that's a particularly prominent part of, when we talk about contenders for the title, we don't talk about Mabel being an awful contender because he's got no conditioning. We don't talk about, Yokozuna being an awful contender because he's got no conditioning. It's just not something that features. And yet now, because we're going to do a 60-minute match, we want to talk about conditioning. Fine, but don't do it beforehand. That seemed a bit weird. But it made sense. It was a good opening promo. I completely agree with the sentiment that if this is the extent of the animosity, then it's a big mistake. I think we've just got to give them the benefit of the doubt and saying 4 more weeks is plenty of time to build more between these two. And at the moment, they don't really have a reason to dislike each other. So that's something that they do need to build. I guess, Rory, the bigger question is a hour-long match, I think, is a really odd move.
Yes, I know they've had a title match against each other, Survivor Series 92, but the world was very different then. So you're starting this, inverted commas, feud with a 60-minute Iron match? I mean, that sort of thing is normally the ultimate blow-off if you're going to go there. And beginning with that, from a storyline perspective, I'm struggling to square that particular circle. Not that I have any problem with watching 2 of the 3 best workers in the company wrestle for an hour, and if they're allowed to do that, then we could be witness to something very, very special, and I'm sure we all hope that that's what we're going to get. But starting with an Iron Man match, they're working backwards on that one, in my opinion. It's odd.
Chris?
I find it very intriguing. It's something I want to see, but I don't know that I expect it to, with hindsight, be the best idea. I don't really have that high expectations. I think that obviously they'll put on a great match, but there's certainly got to be some limitations to what they do. If it's an hour, you can't do all your big spots in the first half an hour, and it's spreading them out throughout the match. And I do wonder how, I'm sure, like, as Rory said, some of the best workers in the company, some of the best workers in the world, I'm sure they will put together a great match, but I am worried how you maintain interest for a full hour just in a pure wrestling match. It makes me think there'll be some kind of angle in the middle. The fact that it's no DQ, maybe, I know it's the main event of WrestleMania, but no DQ, you'd think there might be interference, but I don't know who would get involved on whose side. There's no one really in that picture who fits that criteria, but it's intriguing to me. I don't have the highest expectations, but I am looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin with this one, really. I mean, yes, it is an odd opening match to what presumably we wanted quite a few, in the sense that what do you follow that up with? What's the next step? We also look at Bret Hart in the last 18 months, 2 years, who has a particularly poor track record when it comes to stipulation matches. I look to him against Bob Backlund from WrestleMania. I look to him against Diesel from this month. E.g., putting him in with guys who, if they just had a normal match, would probably be really good. Bret and Diesel is normally pretty good. They have a cage match and all of a sudden it's not. Bret and Backlund have admittedly a submission match at Survivor Series 1994 that's very, very good. They go to WrestleMania, have an I Quit match, and it's an absolute shit show. And for a guy like Bret, who's just naturally so good, it seems like an odd move. That being said, these are 2 guys that will, if any 2 guys in the company can do it, it's these 2. My main 2 concerns coming out of this are, 1, does the WWF crowd know how to watch a 1 hour match? You know, if this was WCW, admittedly we're about, you know, my knowledge of 80s WCW isn't great, but, you know, you'll hear Ric Flair regale you with tales of, 60-minute matches and all that kind of thing. If it was WCW, I think it would make more sense because they're perhaps a bit more used to it. But a WWF crowd, I don't know that they're going to be able to handle an hour-long match, And Roy, my bigger question is in a multi-fall match, Bret, as I said before, doesn't have an impact finisher. He sure as shit isn't going to be tapping out Shawn Michaels, making him submit. I don't think that's going to happen. What does he do? Can Bret win 3 falls by roll-up? Does that work?
Oh, they can't really go there. But like you say, Bret doesn't have a bam finisher. It's something like, I don't know, even a big cradle suplex or something he could legitimately do to Shawn. He doesn't even have that unless they want to quickly give it to him in the next few weeks and give him the freedom to do it. If Bret is just going to try and catch quick falls with, as you say, roll-ups or inside cradles, that isn't going to sell him. That's going to make him look a little bit weak and a bit of a chancer. And this is Bret Hart, WWF champion we're talking about here. So they're going to have to find ways. Are they going to try and make it a plunder fest? Are we going to have, foot on the ropes pins with somebody having to play the subtle heel role? Are we going to have chair shots, which doesn't really fit either guy? There's a lot of questions here that I hope they've already answered, but the more I think about it, the more I have my doubts.
Chris?
Yeah, it's as I said, they're 2 of the best workers anywhere in the world. I'm sure they'll put enough time and thought into answering all these questions, and for the most part, because of the level that this match is, the main event of the biggest show of the year, they must get them right. And I have confidence that they will, but there's a lot of things here that if you get a couple of them slightly off, you could end up with, not a train wreck, because I'm not sure you could have a train wreck of a match between these two, but something that means that this match was entirely the wrong decision to have it go for 60 minutes. It could go very wrong, but I do have the confidence that they will be able to work something out and build the level of heat and interest between now and WrestleMania that means the crowd are looking forward to watching this 60 minutes. And because I already am, it's intriguing, and I think I'm sure they will get it right, but there's always that chance they don't.
No, and if they don't, there's no real way out. Like, not that you often call audibles in a match, but in a match you can pace things out and you can make some decisions and say something's not working. You can change things up, maybe shave a couple of minutes off or whatever. If they get 35 minutes into this match and everyone's asleep, what do? And it seems risky on a level that it's gonna work. Like, if it was just Bret and Shawn in a match, I'd bank on it working. I don't know that I would now. I feel like you've just added an unnecessary amount of risk to what is otherwise a home run. And I guess we will see, is the case in point. They have got 4 more weeks, and I think the ultimate point is, if anyone can, in this company, it is these two. We must say that. This isn't Diesel and, Sid in a 60-minute match, God forbid.
Don't.
There are plenty of combinations of 60-minute match that I absolutely wouldn't want to watch. This I'm intrigued by, but there's a lot of inherent risk, and there's a lot of strange decision making. Anyway,
they didn't need to take as well. They've
unless it tells you that they are a bit worried about filling out the WrestleMania card. And admittedly, with Bret and Shawn and Undertaker and Diesel as your top 2 matches, Yokozuna and Vader as a bit of a freak show match. They're not that far away. It's like, if you were worried about in-ring work rate, you could put on, there are guys in this lower order that can work. You could put on Owen Hart against Hakushi or something like that in the opening hour if you're thinking, well, we might need a bit of entertainment value on this. I don't know. But there are matches you can do. It just seems a bit odd. But ultimately, we will be back next month and we will find out.
The WWF's intentions with the Billionaire Ted segments became somewhat clearer this month as they launched a press campaign attempting to harm WCW ahead of the merger between Time Warner and Turner Broadcasting Systems. On Raw on February the 5th, Vince McMahon closed the show with an advert they had attempted to place in both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. The advert had in big lettering, "Attention stockholders, Time Warner beware," along with the line, "Has Ted Turner lost $40 million of your money in his personal vendetta against the World Wrestling Federation? Where are these losses reported in TBS financial statements?" The amended advert that ran in the Times simply said, "Does Ted Turner have a personal vendetta against the World Wrestling Federation?" Vince McMahon's strategy, which it would seem is far from over, is to try and damage the public image of WCW sufficiently that the newly merged organisation would drop it. It's believed that he is citing Time Warner selling their interest in Six Flags as it wasn't profitable and dropping some of their rap artists who, while profitable, were generating negative publicity. On the 8th of February, McMahon sent a letter to Turner bemoaning what he called multiple times as the promotion of self-mutilation, e.g. blading, on its programming. The letter ended with McMahon saying, "Notwithstanding numerous unprecedented predatory practices against the World Wrestling Federation, you continue to promote self-mutilation. I hope your stockholders hold you accountable for this unethically, guttural, potentially unhealthy practice." McMahon was far from done, however. It is reported the WWF actually filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, to quote the Wrestling Observer, claiming TBS has been engaged in a systematic plan to destroy the WWF so it can achieve a monopoly over the wrestling industry. McMahon has even said more than once that he considers the WWF to be fighting for its life at the moment. He also, unsurprisingly, does not consider this situation similar to what happened a decade ago when the rise of the WWF ran a lot of the territories into the ground. He has also complained this month about contract tampering, in particular the Bushwhackers, Jean-Pierre Lafitte, and most noteworthy, Diesel. On the Diesel front, the story is essentially true, although the WCW representative is actually Hulk Hogan. One thing at least that McMahon does have the high ground on is what happened on Nitro on February the 5th, where the power went out for a number of minutes during the main event. After a backup generator restored some of the lighting and the TV, Eric Bischoff said, "I wonder how that happened." McMahon, in a letter sent via Jerry McDevitt, was quite right in taking umbrage with that line. As for what aired on WWF Raw this month, while the Billionaire Ted segments did continue, they weren't really noteworthy, beyond the airing of the newspaper adverts we mentioned earlier. They moved away from the phony press conferences to Larry Fling Live on the BNN network. That's short for Billionaire News Network.
Let's talk Billionaire Ted. I'm not sure that there is a ton of new stuff to discuss, in that a lot of it is even kind of over my head in terms of the stuff Vince McMahon is planning, but we have 2 new guests on, and we do have a month's worth of segments to kind of trawl through, I suppose. Chris, what are your views on kind of the segments as a whole, and, you know, kind of where they're taking it this month?
Well, yeah, I heard, obviously, you guys discussed this last month when they first started airing. This was my first time I'd seen any of the segments. I quite enjoy them. I think for what they are, like, they're cheap, they're silly, they're meant to be. They're pretty amusing. They're fine. The fact there's such like a grand plan and message behind them, and it's so complicated, is slightly weird. And the advert in the was it the New York Times, or was it the
New York Times?
Like,
I think it ended up being in the New York Times, a version of it, the one that didn't appear on Raw. But Vince McMahon did mention we did ask for this to run in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal.
So at their very core, the message about how WCW's lost so much money and looking to promote this negative public image that could jeopardize WCW's immediate future in, is it the Time Warner merger? It's very grand. It's very risky, but as a segment on TV, like a short segment, they're short, they're sweet, they keep things simple, they're pretty funny. Like, I don't know how I feel about them having such a huge sort of message to them underlying it. It's slightly strange to me, but the segments themselves I enjoy.
Rory.
Yeah, the WWF and comedy don't usually make very easy bedfellows, but these skits taken in their own right, there are some funny things in there. I mean, there was one particular moment where we had Terry from Venice, I think it was from Venice Beach, California, phoning up the Larry Fling show, where he was on the run from a woman brandishing a shoe, which I thought was fantastic and very funny indeed. And taken on their own right, they're really good skits. The problem is what Vince is actually really trying to say with them, which is him using up valuable minutes of his own television show. He's only got an hour on Raw, and he's taking up about 3 or 4 minutes at the end of each show, really, when he really should be bringing to an end big cliffhangers to take into the next week or the next pay-per-view or whatever. And he's using those to have a very public go at his major business rival, which I think, it's like I touched on the WCW show last month, it's Vince hitting back fairly hard. I mean, these are quite close to the knuckle, but it's like the guys on the WWF pod said last month. If you're talking about your competition that much and that explicitly, people who might not really get everything these skits are referring to might think, oh, is this those WCW guys? Oh, are they really that bad? I might flick over and see if what WWF say about them is true or not. And then you're potentially losing viewers. It's a fun game for those people who know what's going on, but that's a pretty low percentage of the Raw viewing audience. And we've said it before about Vince and WWF. One of their main problems in the past is that they don't know where to stop. And Is this leading to a match at WrestleMania? That's what they were hinting at with some of these skits. Is that where they're going with this?
It's been talked about.
Wow. Bloody hell.
Maybe that's why they need Bret and Shawn to go an hour. They've got stuff like this planned for the middle. But yeah, it is strange. I mean, knowing now what we know, it makes a bit more sense. Okay, there are grander plans for these stuff beyond, what we're seeing, and Vince McMahon is almost kind of just using this as a vehicle rather than, but it's weird. I speak earlier about jokes that are just funny for Vince McMahon. This is kind of segments that are just interesting for Vince McMahon. Anytime he says, we do the show for the fans, this certainly isn't that. And I'd agree, they are largely funny. I think the opening one of the month was a bit like, I wouldn't call any of these segments subtle, but a lot of them are a bit more, will hide a message inside something that kind of feels like entertainment. The bit on the 5th with the second half of the press conference did seem a bit crass and a bit kind of open and full on in terms of what they were trying to accuse Ted Turner of. I must admit,
too personal, that one.
Yeah, I must admit the guy playing Billionaire Ted, I think, is largely really funny. It's not great when they're implying he's a bit of a, I don't know what the word is, mentally handicapped almost, when he kind of gets lost for words and starts drooling almost. But he's really good. But yeah, the segments are a bit, we're 2 months in. If each segment is 3.5 minutes long, over the course of 8 shows, that's 25 minutes of the first 2 months. You could have been building a new character or two or whatever. You could have used that thing for anything, and you used it to take some underhanded shots at WCW that I think, while I gave them credit for them last month, it's kind of like, I don't know that I'd still be running these. I don't know. But yeah, it all seems a bit counterproductive. It all seems a bit, what's the goal of this? But, ultimately it is Vince McMahon's prerogative, and, I guess we will see, long story short. We'll see where this story development takes us next month. We will finish with a short discussion on Razor Ramon and, to a lesser extent, Diesel. Diesel, as we understand it, is talking with WCW, specifically Hulk Hogan, about joining WCW. Hogan wants to bring him in to, surprise, face him in a heel program. Razor Ramon, as we understand it, has handed in his 90-day notice period, because he has agreed to terms with WCW. And I guess, Rory, the question from this show's point of view on Volume 1, we'll discuss from the other side of the coin, is, Razor and Diesel, I mean, they won't really be known as that on that side of the coin, because, with characters and all of that, I would call them two good gets if from a WCW's point of view.
Definitely. These are big names. If it looks like Razor is definitely going to go, and it looks like Diesel might well be joining him, these are big losses name-wise for WWF. Well, I've got to say, I do think that Razor in particular, barring a couple of exceptions, and notable exceptions, SummerSlam 95 being one of them, he as a character has been spinning his wheels now for a good year and a half. He'll always come on, he'll always get a decent pop, he'll always put on a good match, especially if he's in there with the right opponents. But he hasn't really done a whole lot. He's been thereabouts. He hasn't been given the main event push, which I thought 18 months ago looked absolute certain. So I still think it will freshen him up a bit, but he's still a massive loss if he's going to go, because he gets good crowd reactions most of the time, and he's a name as close as you're going to get probably to a household name for somebody in his position on the card. So WWF are going to miss him, and if Diesel goes as well, then that is a huge loss, especially now as it looks as though they're positioning him for were at least positioning him for a big heel run. I mean, if he hasn't officially turned heel now, he's damn close after smashing up Undertaker's casket. So it looks like that could have been a fairly long program that's going to come to an end. So from a WWF perspective, these are two big holes that they will struggle to fill, and these are major boons for WCW if they go ahead.
Chris?
Yeah, it's an absolutely huge loss for the WWF. as Rory said, that Razor has definitely got this sort of untapped main event level push that was never been exploited, and he can go straight into WCW. I know the reports that Hogan wants Diesel to go in and work with him, but you could also work with Razor, and Rory said he's someone who gets good reactions. He's never been in the main event for the WWF, but I'd call him one of their biggest stars. He gets some of the biggest reactions, and as Rory said, because considering he hasn't really been doing all that much of note, or it speaks volumes about how good he is if he still gets a reaction when he's around, considering how easy it is to have a dead crowd at these shows. We saw it during the Diesel Bret In Your House. So I think Razor's a massive loss, probably potentially more than Diesel for me, because we had that long Diesel title run. I know we haven't fully gone down the heel Diesel role yet, but I think you've lost so much more potential with what you could have done with Razor, rather than, I think, Diesel. We had that long title run. He's been there. I think they're obviously massive losses, but they're also huge acquisitions for WCW. And we see in the Billionaire Ted segments, like, you have Randy and Terry phoning in and about all these old guys who can't wrestle anymore and things like this. Well, two of your most recognisable stars that most certainly don't fall into that category, are they both 36? They're jumping ship now. So these segments are going to have to, I think, rethink themselves a little bit if they are both off.
Well, and more the point that in one of the boardroom segments at the beginning of last month, there's the bit where Billionaire Ted basically says, well, can't we just buy them? But yes, it turns out, and I guess from a WWF perspective, be careful what you wish for. Chris, no, I'd agree. I think Razor is a bigger loss, more just because we don't know with Razor. And, there's plenty of reason to say that Diesel wasn't helped by what they were doing with him, but Diesel is a little bit like Lex Luger in that they may have got it wrong with him, but in the eyes of a lot of fans, he might be damaged goods. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see Razor higher up the card. And as much as I think money is very much a factor here from both of their point of views, WWF pay in a more of we'll pay you a lower base salary, but we'll pay you higher from house shows, merchandise sales, and all the others. So, in theory, at least you'll make more money. And I think there's no doubt that WWF, in terms of house shows, the house shows have been mixed recently, but they're certainly running more than WCW are, and I think their merchandising arm is a lot better. But if WCW are going to offer them a higher base salary for fewer dates, and I think that's vastly important as well, I think that's a key factor. And I think from Razor Ramon's point of view, you might look at what's happened to Lex Luger, who was a mid-card babyface act in WWF when he left, joined WCW, and okay, he's tag champion now, and he's kind of trotting around the upper mid-card, kind of while they sort out what they're doing at the top end of their roster. But Luger arrived in WCW and immediately became a bigger deal, almost in part just by being there. And I feel like if Razor Ramon goes to WCW, he might just be a bigger deal just by being there. I think that he would be a very natural heel for them. Hogan, as much as other things, want guys of size. Razor's got that, just like Diesel's got that. From a WWF perspective, it's two big losses. It's two, it's not like, this isn't like sport. They can't, ask for, well, I suppose they could try and ask for some talent coming the other way, but they can't use any income they've earned from selling Razor and Diesel and bringing guys from other places. It's not a zero-sum game in that sense. We don't lose two guys, but gain the ability to sign two guys of equal standing. You lose two big names, and everyone kind of shuffles up, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, but you've got to have those guys in place to shuffle up, and I don't know that they do. We'll see. I mean, I think the most worrying thing of all was the rumours that Bret Hart might be discussing with WCW as well. There'd be a lot of trouble if that happened, but we'll see about that. But we'll see how it plays out as we understand it. Razor Ramon will risk WrestleMania, which is another big loss, and again, maybe maybe another contributory factor as to why they've gone to that hour-long Bret Shawn match is just that they don't have a lot else on the card. A little bit strange in the sense that it's not really stopped them before, but, you know, if there is the fact of we ain't got a lot on this undercard, let's see if we can have Bret and Shawn fill more time. We will see. But anyway, we'll see how all this plays out. That will end this month's show. I'd firstly like to thank Rory McNamara.
Pleasure as always.
Rory, you are on Twitter.
Yep, RorsDM, RORSDM.
Excellent. And Chris White for joining us on about 3 or 4 days' notice. Thank you very much, Chris.
No problem at all, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. You can be found on Twitter and your podcast.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at ChrisWhite14. Also do a wrestling podcast, not set 20 years ago. It's called Podflex City. So if you want to check out podcasts about more modern day wrestling, you can find that on iTunes. You can find that on SoundCloud and also on Twitter at Podflex City.
Excellent. And that leaves me just to finish up the wrap-up. Yeah, so Volume 1 is WCW, looking at Super Rule. Volume 3 is ECW, looking at Cyber Slam. We're also going to be discussing all the Brian Pillman stuff across both of those shows. That's got to be seen to be believed, some of that stuff. You can find us on Twitter at Wrestling20RS. We're on Facebook. Everything's on the website Wrestling20RS.com. If you're on iTunes, do leave us a rating and a review. And that will do that. I have been Bob Bamber. This has been Volume 2 of the February 1996 edition of the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. And until next time, goodbye.